Side 95, the home of rock and roll. Little Halloween rock and roll from Ozzy there, Mr. Crowley.
Yes, buddy.
Taking us to 820.
Welcome to the show this morning. We got an exciting one for you. We're taking you through an old case here. It was an actual, it turned into a trial. It was a murder here in the local area. And our former news director from many years ago, Mike Allen, joins us to tell us all the details of the case. I think it's so cool. He has all of his stuff from when he investigated this thing.
He does. And then when we were texting back and forth, I don't know how many questions he asked me. How long the segments are, and then we're going to should I do this? Should I do that? I said, yep, it's Mike. Very thorough.
We have a tape deck in the room, which we're excited about, because we're going to hear some audio from what the Warrens claim at the time was the actual exorcism. Or an exorcism?
Actually, one of the supposed fits that the little boy was suffering at the time, little David. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are you doing traffic? Or not?
No, I'm doing
okay. All right. So let's get into this then, because I wanted to talk about, you told me this off the air, at some point leading up to the trial, before the trial happens, after the murder, there's a claim made by the group involved that the demon that was in 12-year-old David jumps to Arnie, who is accused of the murder, correct?
Correct.
How do they claim that happened?
Well, Arnie was trying to get that demon out of David and move into his body.
So the story actually starts in Newtown. On Old Hollyville Road, there's a house that literally is adjacent to I-84. Where Old Hollyville crosses over the highway. And I believe it was Debbie and Arnie at the time were renting that house, and they were moving from that house, and David was there with him, the little boy David. And David was heard crying in the room. They came in to see what was the matter, and he was sitting on the bed. He said, somebody pushed me onto the bed. And they said, well, who pushed you onto the bed? And he said, that guy, and he was pointing into the corner. And there was nobody there. So they said, well, we don't get it. And they had a Polaroid camera with them and took a picture and said, do you see him in there? And he said, yeah, I see him in there. He's right there. And they said, well, draw around there if you would. And so he did, and he drew a figure that I still have a copy of that photograph. Somebody who had, either long ears or horns and hooves on feet. And that's when this whole thing supposedly began, was there in that room. And so David, from that point on, supposedly was going through fits, having these, possession fits. This is when the family consulted the Catholic Church, consulted the Warrens, called Brookfield police because things apparently were getting a little out of control. And, there was talk of Ouija boards and all sorts of stuff going on. So during one of the fits, and this is what we have the audio tape of, Arne Cheyenne Johnson, 19 at the time, allegedly decided that he was going to tell the devil to get out of David and to come into him and challenge him instead. And as the Warrens would say later, that the devil obliged him and went into him. Over the next couple of weeks, the story, was alleged that Arnie woke up from a deep sleep, swung his arm around to a dresser and broke through it with his arm. It was kind of like superhuman strength. He was driving his car from the house driveway, and supposedly took off on its own, went out of control, and drove off the side of the driveway, supposedly trying to kill him. That he was starting to make growling sounds, and so this was all sort of registered with officials in the church, and this is when the exorcisms were held, and all this then leading up to what ended up being the murder on February 16th, 1981. So what I'll do here is I have archaic technology of a cassette recorder, but this is the actual cassette recorder for all of you following along at home who can see this, that I made the tape on at the Warrens' house. It's about 90 seconds, and you're going to hear You're going to hear David, clearly, at least what's alleged to be. I mean, I wasn't there when the tape was made.
Right.
There's a copy. So supposedly David is in here, his mother, Debbie Glatzel, and Arnie Johnson are the four primary voices you'll hear, and it's pretty clear who's who.
David, I'm
In the name of Jesus, Jesus repels you. Leave this child alone. It's on your forehead. Yes, never. You are not strong. You're weak. You're weak.
Swine.
Jesus loves this boy. This is his child.
Wake him out of it. Slap him up to something. He won't get out of it right now, Ma.
He told me that he can do nothing now.
Well, what do you think you've been doing all
In the name
this
of the
time?
Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. You gotta hold him down. He told me to. Hold him on the ground, he said.
David, Mommy's here. Mommy's here. Come on, wake up. Come on. Get up. Come on, let's go. Get out of this. Get out of my son. Get out of my son. Come on. Come on, son. Son, get up. Get away from my son. No! I'm your mother. David, wake up. Get up.
Oil.
Get up, David. Use the holy Mommy loves you.
In
Mommy
the name of
loves
the
you.
Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Do something. Put him up. It won't
You
work.
can't sit him up. He gave me orders.
I'm doing it. David, just get up. My God, get up.
Wow.
Those
Now-
are unearthly sounds.
That allegedly takes place prior to the murder or
Yeah,
after?
prior to the murder. And we first played that 37 years ago here on I-95. And I can tell you the phones lit up. People from both sides. Some people were very irate that we played it.
Sure.
Saying that's just, you're adding to it. You're giving the devil what he wants. And there were other people who were calling up and saying, "Oh my God, can you play that again?" It was all over the map. But anyway, Dick Clark heard about this and decided to make a movie for NBC. And anybody who wants to further, sort of investigate this, there is a website called IMDb, which is InternetMovieDatabase.com. And the name of the movie is The Demon Murder Case. So Dick Clark produced this. He sent a guy named William Kelly. Excuse me, was the screenwriter. And William Kelly came out. I drove around with him for a day. Ruth Lockwood, who the late great Ruth Lockwood, who was the court reporter for the Danbury News-Times, she and I were having sort of a friendly feud, going back and forth to see who had the latest, take on the story. And she was great. But anyways, Ruth and I were both offered to be script consultants out in Hollywood. And in return for that, William wanted, us to divulge everything that we had heard. Now, a lot of the stuff I had heard from police officers and priests and whatnot was in strict confidence. I said, I'm not going to break that confidence. I did not go out to Hollywood. Ruth did go out to Hollywood. And so this was quite a cast at the time. So Kevin Bacon, in one of his earliest movies, played Arnie Johnson, the one who did the stabbing. Andy Griffith and Eddie Albert, stretching probably the age brackets here, who remembers them. But they were in it. Cloris Leachman played Ruth Lockwood. And Kevin Kercheval, who played in Dallas, for anybody who remembers that series, played Cliff Barnes in Dallas, played me in the movie. And
Were you happy with your casting?
No, I was not. I should have gone on to the script consultant. Is what I should have done. But, anyway, so they aired this movie in 1983. It was the NBC Movie of the Week. And you can go on and see the movie and download it from that site. And it's I can tell you, I've watched it, and while it's a little campy for my blood, it is the facts are accurate. They stuck to the facts as certainly as I knew them and understood them.
I'd probably be played by David Caruso, and I would not be happy with that one bit. Now, there's so much here that we could do this with you all morning, and I don't know what our time constraints are with Mike, but I do want to get one question in here, something that you mentioned off the air. There was an interesting fact that came up, and I don't know if it was in pre-trial or during the trial, or maybe it's information that you got from the medical examiner about the precision of the wounds.
Yeah. So at the trial, they ended up going through a regular trial. Arnie was convicted of manslaughter, but they called up the medical examiner to talk about the wounds on the body. And in the torso, there were 4 wounds, and the medical examiner described them as surgical in nature. That is, not probably created by in a fit of rage, not created by a serrated edged knife, which is the kind that was alleged for Arnie to have used. And they measured out to a perfect rectangle. And the medical examiner was sort of boxed into a corner and forced to admit on the stand that he had never in his professional practice ever seen anything like that. Now, the stab wound that killed Alan Bono was in the neck, and it severed the artery that went to the brain, and that's what actually killed him. But the 4 wounds in the torso did measure out, and I saw the autopsy photos. It was an absolute, a rectangle. It was pretty spooky.
Now, you said all of the ghoulish nonsense once trial happened was not really admitted to be part of it. The judge didn't want a circus, and that was based on a clerical error made by the lawyer at the time. But I want to know, what was the motive established for the murder in court, and does that motive satisfy all the facts that you gathered just from your personal standpoint?
If I understand the question right, I mean, they tried to introduce demonic possession as a defense, saying not guilty by reason of demonic possession. The judge said, I'm only going to let you go with insanity. He said, no, it's demonic possession. By the time he said, hey, can we do insanity, it was too late. And he ended up going to jail on manslaughter charges. Somebody was stabbed to death. No question about it. The original story that the Little Sisters had told was that the knife was flying through midair and that Arnie never held the knife. And they later changed that story. So I think that, you have a situation where I think a lot of people got caught up in a situation. And it is my own personal belief at this point in time is that you had somebody who stabbed somebody in a fit of rage, and over what, who knows? But I think that probably justice was served, but it's still a lot of open questions, a lot of things that one still wonders about.
You do wonder, though. That's the sense I get from this. There's things that, because of your journalistic integrity, you still won't share about it. So you have curiosities, and I just wonder if the motive that they presented in court, if it satisfies you.
So here's my biggest problem: is that people I know and respect told me at the time things that are hard to reconcile.
Right. Wow. That's great stuff.
I'm looking at the movie you had mentioned, The Demon Murder Case. Looking it up online here. Did you know that Harvey Firestein was the demon voice in the movie?
Oh, Harvey. This Harvey, there's one that's like this.
Yeah.
I missed that credit.
Not Weinstein, but Firestein.
Firestein.
Okay.
Did I say
That's
Weinstein?
A whole other ball of wax. No. You said Firestein.
A lot
You
of
said
Steens
Firestein.
out there, yeah.
So what are we doing here time-wise, Ethan? Why don't you make a call? And I need to know if Mike's leaving or what.
The deal is we have to get into
stuff.
Commercials.
Yeah.
Then we got to play a tune. Then we got to come back and do a news break.
Okay.
All
Because
right.
I'll ditch whatever the hell else we're doing to find out more about this if you have time.
What?
I'm here if
All right.
we're good.
All right, good.
Got to check with the kid.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take the break. And, before we do anything, I got to do this, okay? We got to do the thing.
The thing.
Yes.
The box office is open now.
Right.
Be caller 9 at 203-775-9595 to score some great concert tickets in the I-95 Ticket Blitz.
All right, the great concert tickets are a pair of tickets to go see the official Blues Brothers review at the Ridgefield Playhouse. This is sanctioned by Dan Aykroyd and Judith Belushi, so these guys are good.
All right, buddy. Just be caller 9 203-775-9595.
It's not just any TV.
Mom!